Oh, Wish has still got her hands on the stone. And she's trying to get away. Wish thought of Tsar earlier in the camp, yelling at his father, and as she did so, she could see the flow of magic going from her to the witch, slowing. "It's too late," said Bodkin. "The stone is moving." The stone had begun to rock, gently at first, and then wilder, faster, faster. A witch's whiskers and murmuring mistletoe and yellow toenails of the balmiest bog ogres in bogdom, thought Bodkin. The witch might finally have soaked up enough magic to break out of the stone. "Leave, leave, leave," shrieked the spikes and the hairy fairies, burning bright as meteors. But they couldn't leave Wish there on her own. Not Bodkin, not Tsar, not Caliburn, nor the snowcats, nor even the Spites. Sprites have a bad name for themselves. People say they are treacherous, flighty creatures who do not know the meaning of love or loyalty. But all I can say is that these sprites, despite their terror at the rocking stone, at the witch about to emerge, at the fear of death itself, stayed by their master's side. They were hissing and spitting like bonfires, but nonetheless they stayed. Without thinking, Tsar drew the enchanted sword. The light shone on the blade. "Once there were witches, but I killed them." He held the sword up over his head, gave a great big yowl, and plunged it right into the stone with all of his strength. Of course, that ought to be impossible. A stone made out of iron to enter a stone, but a sword made out of iron to enter a stone, but the magic sword sank into the stone right up to the hilt, as if Tsar were plunging it into the earth. Boom! Every single strand of Wish's hair sprang up and shone like fire. A smell of burning hair added to the smoke in the room. The door of the chamber exploded out of its hinges and slammed into the opposite wall. Lightning shot off the surface of the stone and Wish was catapulted off it. She shot backwards through the air and landed with a horrible thud at the back of the room. Little lines shone all over the surface of the stone, just like the lines that appear on an egg before a chick is born. "The stone is cracking," screamed Tippenstorm. "The stone is cracking." The stone cracked from side to side. A great jagged split, an inch wide, zigzagged across the stone with the sword stuck in the centre of it. And out of that split, something slithered. So scary. The stone is cracking. I'm gonna begin the start of chapter 20 because it's got to a very exciting bit. The story gets even twistier. At first, the something looked like a little slick of black oil leaking out of the stone, like the yolk leaking out of a broken shell. It couldn't be the King Witch, could it? For how could the thing that they had seen inside there creep out of a split only an inch wide? Surely the witch must be dead when a great big witch-killing sword had been driven right into the stone enclosing it. That must be the dead witch's blood leaking out of the broken stone. But in front of their eyes, the pool of liquid grew larger and larger. And then the black water solidified, turning in front of their eyes into something flesh and blood that moved, a real and living body. A feathery, soggy scarecrow of something, feathers soaking wet. Sometimes people like to reassure themselves that witches can't possibly ever have been as bad as the fairy stories said they were. One look at the King Witch told you that they were every bit as bad, and maybe even somewhat worse. Just looking at a witch has been known to scare a person to death. They can, of course, assume many forms, some of them quite pleasant, but mostly they find it helpful to look as scary as possible. The thing had a nose like a knife, so razor sharp and pointy at the end that it looked like you could cut onions with it. There were these just two black holes instead of eyes either side, like deep wells, with something flinty and slimy as mercury glinting creasily at the bottom of them. The mouth dripping that revolting black saliva from the fangs. The jaws could unhinge to swallow a deer in one gulp. A body like a human mixed with a panther, and those black feathery wings. All in all, the King Witch was not a pretty sight. Power reeked from that slithering thing as slowly he unfurled his wet black wings to their full extent, and they dripped on the dungeon floor, black smoking drips, as he lifted his beak and looked straight at Tsar and Bodkin. And then he vanished. "Where is it? Where is it? Where is it?" said Tsar, whirling round. The animals howled in horror. The sprites opened up their fang-filled mouths and shrieked in fear, for there are few things more scary than an enemy you cannot see. Wish, over on the other side of the room, picked herself up, shaking. Nobody panic, said Caliban, panicking like crazy. Where is it? Can anyone see it? The three of them whirled round and round, trying to see the invisible witch, but there was nothing to see. It's going to attack witch, said Tsar. He knew this, he wasn't sure why. Sure enough, the air above Wish began to thicken and darken. Bravely the enchanted spoon, standing on Wish's head, turned to face the darkness. But an enchanted spoon is the sort of thing you might want on your side if you were making dessert, not if you are facing one of the most terrifying life forms that has ever walked the planet. Tsar tried to drag the sword out of the stone, but he was stuck fast, as if he had been rooted there all along. However hard he pulled, it would not budge. So with another blood-curdling yell, completely unarmed, Tsar, the boy who cared for nobody but himself, launched himself at the diving witch. I'll have to read the rest of the chapter tomorrow.